Welcome back to the show. I'm Kevin O'Sullivan.
And I'm Alex Phillips. Now to our top story. And 3 of the mothers of kidnapped hostages being held by Hamas since the 7th of October attacks a month ago have told TalkTV in an exclusive interview of their anguish. Hadass Calderon, Renana Jacob and Bathsheba Yahatomi have 9 members of their families taken by the terrorists. Bathsheba, whose husband Ohad, along with their eldest son Eitan, is still missing, described the moment the 12-year-old was taken.
This was the last moment I saw Eitan, my son. His motorcycle continued to Gaza. Me and my 2 daughters, we managed to escape through the fields. We went 3.5 hours with pajamas, no shoes, no telephones. They took the phones. We don't know anything about Ohad and about Eitan, my son. I know Eitan is alone. He's only 12. No child should be alone without his mother.
Holding back tears, Renana, who wasn't at home at the time of the attack, recounts the last phone call she had with her son, Yagel, who was taken with his 16-year-old brother, Or.
The last thing I heard was my 12-year-old, Yagil, begging, saying, "Don't take me, I'm too young. You can't take me, I'm too young." He was repeating it a couple of times and then the phone hung up and the line went off. And that was the last time I heard of them. As the chap said, we heard nothing since. We don't know anything of their whereabouts. We don't know whether they're alive. We don't know
for how long,
where they are, whether they're being taken care of. They're children. They're just children.
And Hadass Calderon's son and daughter Erez and Sahar are still missing, along with 3 other family members taken from their kibbutz last month.
I want you to imagine, any mom in the world, to imagine for 1 minute, your child, your young little boy or girl, being kidnapped suddenly from their safe house with pajama from their bed. No shoes, no nothing, just kidnapped like that. Cruelly way, merciless way, cruelly way. Been holding like that when they're helpless, terrified, confused.
Joining us now is Conservative MP Iain Duncan Smith. Iain, very powerful testimonies there from the mothers of some of the kidnapped kids, which I think kind of reminds us why Israel is doing what it is. It's strange the way that amid the pro-Palestinian protests, it's almost as if some of the horrors that happened on October the 7th have been forgotten in the mists of time. And to hear those mothers, the heartbreak of having their kids wrenched from their arms, being held God knows where now, reminds us why Israel is doing what it's doing.
Yeah, Hamas knew exactly what they were doing in their first attack. About 1,400 people killed, 260, 70 hostages taken. It's also the way they killed the people. They didn't just kill them. They beheaded them. They set fire to their bodies. All of this was to make as much of this, when they filmed it, that would be redolent of the terrible Holocaust and remind the Jews and send a message to the Israelis that this is going to be revisited upon you. That was the purpose of what they did. It wasn't in any way just a killing. These were deliberate, filmed shock stories. And then taking the hostages was also a way of defying the Israelis and saying, you can't come and take us, because we know Hamas uses civilians as human shields. They're doing it right now in Gaza. There's groups of people that haven't left northern Gaza. That's because they can't leave northern Gaza, because they are the shields that that Hamas use. So all of this, sometimes I wonder, those who have been shouting and complaining about the attacks on Gaza after Hamas have never once referenced the reality that this was brought on to Gaza and Hamas by Hamas quite deliberately.
I mean, in an age of information warfare, that sort of grey zone cyber warfare we see very often used, particularly by hostile regimes in the 21st century, we now know, don't we, that at least half of the groups who have been mobilising for these marches are directly Hamas connected. In fact, a former leader of Hamas, Mohammed Sawala, living in a council house in Barnet. I think Rishi Sunak, as Prime Minister, used the King's speech today to express solidarity with Israel. But this is now coming increasingly in the wake of public opinion, albeit potentially driven by the terrorist organisations themselves. How much solidarity can the UK afford to show?
Well, I think we have to stand by the Israelis, because what they're doing is defending themselves. I know it sounds and looks awful on the pictures, and of course it is. And no innocent child or family member who's killed on either side of this, we weep for them, because that is the terrible nature of war. But I keep coming back to the fact that the Israelis, I do believe, are doing their level best to make sure they target those areas where there's very distinctly Hamas people. But those Hamas fighters make sure that there are civilians around them. They've operated from under hospitals, from schools. This is what they do, because they believe that if Israel strikes them, they can make an issue of it as well. So we need to get this right. And Rishi Sunak, I think, has been very bold about this and been very clear, and he's right to say so. The truth about these marches, and I said something about it a couple of days ago, I said that Remembrance Sunday is it's actually Remembrance Weekend, because I'm laying wreaths from Friday right the way through to Sunday. Sunday is the culmination, and many of my colleagues are doing the same. So the Remembrance Weekend is a very special weekend for many of us who served, and others who didn't serve but want to pay their respects to those who never came back, having fought for the freedoms that these people are now abusing by marching up our streets and often shouting that ghastly slogan, "From the river to the sea," which means getting rid of the Jews from Palestine. So this has to be stopped. Not over this weekend. They have a right to march, but not over this weekend, and we should ban it.
Yeah, Ian, I've attended a couple of these marches just to take a look. I got caught up in them, and I wouldn't say that they're menacing, and I'm not sure that Suella Braverman is entirely right to categorise them as hate marches, but there's a strange atmosphere about them. They're vehemently anti-Israel. They're pretty anti-British. And in terms of these protests planned for this weekend, I think what we have to bear in mind is the shocking scenes we saw yesterday in Edinburgh Station, when an old army war veteran selling poppies, 78 years old, was punched to the ground by a pro-Palestinian protester. And I think we have to ask ourselves, what exactly is going on when that happens? What are these marches about? Yes, they're pro-Palestine. Yes, they're anti-Israel. But what else are they? Why is this pro-Palestinian protester punching an innocent war hero poppy seller to the ground? What is that all about? And if that is to be the nature of these marches, then I do think we have to think about whether or not they can go ahead.
Well, I agree. I thought that scene was shocking, considering that ex-soldier, like many of my colleagues, put their lives on the front line to defend their rights to protest in the first place. So they should be showing respect to those people. They wouldn't have these freedoms to do this in Iran, for example, or they wouldn't be doing it somewhere else in Palestine. The answer is that they are free to protest. That's always been one of the freedoms. But there's a time and a place for everything. And this coming weekend is not the time or the place for them to come and protest during the remembrance organizations, the parades, etc., because they're all about those who fought for their freedoms. There have been too many people, obviously a minority, who have joined these marches and waved Hamas flags and chanted that ghastly slogan and other slogans too, who should be arrested. The Met have been, I think, quite slow about this, really worried about the reaction. The truth is that they have the right both to ban the marches if they think there's a security risk, which it's clear and obvious there will be, given scenes like that at Edinburgh, and at the same time, those who deliberately come to put a very evil slant on it, they should be arrested as well. I spoke to a policeman the other day, I can remain nameless, but he said to me he was drawn down into London only to find that he wasn't allowed to take action against any of these people. He was told just to let the march go on. So you can see there's frustration in many of the rank and file police as well.
Yeah, your sentiments are very much echoed by Israel's President Herzog, who spoke exclusively to Piers Morgan yesterday. Let's have a listen to what he said.
It's atrocious and hypocritic, and I call upon all decent human beings to object to the march and ban it, because the symbol of that day is a symbol of victory, and it's a symbol of doing good, because when you fight evil, sometimes you have to fight. You have to fight evil in order to uproot evil.
And given that we've been discussing the nature of some of the people in these marches, we've had UK intelligence advising us that Tehran themselves have backed, or if not sponsored, radical clerics in this country. We know that they aid and abet, if not arm and fund, places like Hezbollah. We also know that Hamas is one of the best funded terrorist organisations in the world, with $1 billion turnover every year. Has the UK, along with the rest of the West, potentially been a bit myopic and naive when it comes to international foreign policy by increasing trade with Iran, by potentially allowing a fifth column to develop in our own country who are supportive of some of these extremist ideologies? And is it time that we actually see a turning point when it comes to geopolitics?
Well, I think there's no question. A lot of people say that the West and even Israel was caught out by this attack. I think we'd all got slightly complacent because there hadn't been huge eruptions in the last past, and I think people just thought, well, maybe it's quietening down. The truth was, Iran, I'm absolutely certain of this, has had their hands across all of this for some time. A lot of the financing goes through Iran into these organizations like Hezbollah, which is much bigger than Hamas, and Hamas as well. The reality also is that, you know, I just keep questioning the British government as to why we haven't sanctioned the IRGC, the Republican Guard, who report back directly to the clerics. Don't report really back to the Iranian government. They report back to the real power, which is the clerics in Iran, and they are responsible for so much of this, and so much of the sponsoring of clerics, radical clerics, and also arms, advice, all that sort of stuff to Hamas and co. So we should, at least, I believe, it's high time that we sanction. I'm not alone in this, by the way. Many people like Liam Fox and others have all called for the same, which is we should sanction the IRGC, because it's no longer possible for us to say we keep the lines open because it makes it better that way. I think they've gone past the point of no return here, and we need to sanction them, as many other countries like America and Europe have done. We seem to be an outlier now.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more.